All right, this episode of the LPDS, we get into the fan questions. We got a couple of great fan questions, a couple of good topic ideas we'll discuss. This is going to be a very different episode than the norm because I am in Italy with my brothers, Wet Cat and Creature. So we're going to be getting into a couple of quality questions from the fans. I hope you enjoy it. I certainly enjoyed reminiscing about some of the old times and thinking about these things, and it was fun to go about it. So all that, no cage fact this week. We'll talk about that here coming up right now. All right, Jabronis, we're back. Welcome back to the Libretti Podcast Diary Show. I'm your host, Libretti, the show that talks about nothing but tries to find the lessons in everything. We have a good time doing it. This is a special episode this week, specially crafted, I guess you can say, different from the norm, if you will. I am currently in Italy, and I will not be back until after this episode should post. So I need, I wasn't recording over there, so I recorded this episode early. I solicited for your questions and topics ideas, and that's what this episode is going to be. I'm going to run through a couple of the questions that were sent to me and a couple of the ideas, and we're going to go through those and have a good time. So no current events, no cage fact. I remember I mentioned last week that we're not doing the cage fact for two reasons. One, because we're out of town. This is going to be topics only, fan feedback only. And two, there's too many good Spider Noir cage facts that will be spoilies. So I got to come up with a timeline, a threshold of when I'm going to start ripping those facts and warning you guys that spoilies are coming, to give you enough time to go watch it, or just avoid the Into the Cage segments altogether. But with that, this might be a shorter episode. I'm still dealing with video issues. I don't know. I hate this shit. Let me tell you something. Let me see if I can fix this real quick. Stand by. And let me see if I can get this fixed. All right. Hello. All right. I don't know if that worked, but we'll see. I don't even remember what the hell I was talking about when I saw the video freeze again. Anyway, so we'll just get right into it and just go through. This will be shorter, obviously, for a number of reasons, but move right all along into the junction. We'll spin the logo up. Got a few good questions here that I'm going to touch on. Now, the first question I'm going to bring up is came from the Bone Crusher. And it was a topic idea of another sort of Brotherhood movie review, something fun along those lines. And it's a great idea. I'm not going to give a movie review this episode though, because that would be an entire Junction episode. And I'll solicit for the fans to come up with, what movies or movie would you like a review episode of? Similar to the Face Off review episode that I did several years ago when I was down in the trenches of warfare in the modern day D-Day in Virginia Beach. I did the Face Off review. So I'll put that out there in the internet sphere, the Instagram world and Facebook, to get your feedback on that in case you have ideas of a movie, Nic Cage movie perhaps, maybe not a Nic Cage movie, anything that we can do a review of. But I wanted to bring it up that I'm not, certainly not ignoring that as a great idea. I just don't have the time right now to do that. That's going to be a whole episode worth of review, and I want to get to some of these other questions and topics. So thank you for that. All right, moving right along to the next question, if you will. This one is, what is your favorite childhood memory? And the thank you for this question. Great question, by the way, because it really got me to tap back in to some of the good stuff from my childhood. And here's the thing: I can't pick a single memory as my favorite. There's a lot of good ones. There have been some bad ones, but I haven't lived a bad life, so it's not like my childhood. I try to forget about everything. Um, I remember distinctly one year for Christmas, I got this 747 toy airplane. It was a big. I don't have a picture to post now, but my parents certainly have a picture of me in one of their photo books or boxes or something in the dungeon basement I can find. It is a picture of me holding this 747 aircraft. I was 4 or 5 years old, something like that, and it's it's half my size. It's a big. It was probably 3 feet, 2 to 3 feet almost big, like this big. This fucking video freezes again. Unbelievable, dude. Um, Cartoonish with the 747 shape. You know how it has the bulbous tip, if you will, a mushroom tip of the nose. It had that, but it was bigger than it wasn't like a two scale model toy. It was a cartoonish one. But the nose wheel lifted up. It extended up and down. So you would hit the button to get it to quote unquote take off, and it would move forward on its own. And then all of a sudden, the nose wheel would kick into gear, a little toy hydraulics, if you will, and it would shoot the nose up like it was taking off. And that was one of the coolest. I had a lot of cool toys as a kid, airplane wise. My grandfather, JPL2, always, he found all these like metal, iron, aluminum airplane models that we had a ton of those of. Those were a little dangerous because they weren't child safe. Obviously, they were metal. You can hurt yourself if you've dropped it on your foot or your head or whatever. But I had a lot of those. I got this one cool airplane toy where it was an airplane and then on the back was a joystick. And you held it like that. You held it from the back on this joystick and you can hit the buttons. It looked like a throttle for a fighter jet, and you can hit the buttons and it would shoot, make the missile shooting sound, the machine gun sound, the takeoff sound, and this and that. And that was cool as shit. And I remember one time, Nicky Sticks, a young Nicky Sticks, he must have been in preschool. And he had a short temper. And it didn't take much to get him angry or sad or whiny or bitchy. And he might deny that, but we have the receipts. We have the footage of that. And he got mad at me for something one day, and he took that toy and he hit me over the head with it, and my head started bleeding. That was the first time I ever got hit in the head. That might have been the only time I got hit in the head and my head started bleeding. The only other time I can think of is when I shave and I cut myself. But he hit me square with that toy, and I don't remember playing with that toy ever. After that, I think because my mother took it away from us. Because it's not a weapon, it was a toy, and Sticks used it as a weapon, and that was the name of that. But I have a lot of other good memories from childhood. The the first baseball game I went to, I talked about that on the stream one time. The Mets Phillies game was my first ever baseball game. I went with my grandfather, both grandfathers. I think my great uncle went with us. My father. I don't think Sticks was with us. I think he might have been too young. It was in 1992, so I don't think he went with us. But that was at Shea Stadium. It was a great time. I'm trying to think what else. Anytime I went to an air show, because we always went with the grandparents, my grandfathers. So seeing the planes and then hearing about it from my grandfathers, that was, my father was awesome. I love that shit. Any of the war reenactments we went to, I went to a couple where I painted my face camo. One time I did that, and then I had to go to a soccer game after, so I had this like urban camo. It was like silver and black face paint. I might have a picture of that too. And we went to this war reenactment, and they were using blanks out of the rifles, but the bullets were firing, like the bullet shell, the casings were coming out of the guns of the rifles. So after the battle is over, they let the kids run out onto the battlefield to pick up the brass. And I don't know if I still have them somewhere, maybe, but I remember picking up a couple of M1 shells, and I had a whole maybe 5 or 6 of them, and so that was cool. I'm trying to think of what else. There's a lot. There's a lot. The Disney trip, the first time I ever went on an airplane, the Delta flight, red seats. I'll never forget that. So I don't know if I can't pick a favorite. I had a lot of good childhood memories growing up. So there's, I have too many to remember all of them off the top of my head right now. But thanks for that. That was a great question. Thank you for that. It was fun even before I started recording this episode, thinking about what fun stuff can we talk about? Man, I'm thinking about 6 or 7 more right off the top of my head. So, great question. Thank you for that. Next question. Moving on. Who would you say is your biggest influence? Another great question. Another tough question. This might be these questions tap into to some things. I actually might make these Instagram reels for the open the vault stuff that I was talking about in last week's episode that you've probably seen on Instagram already from my pages. So I might try to share these in a short form for that as well. Tough one because I know there's going to be people out there that listen to this sometime in the future and maybe hopefully they don't feel slighted. But I would say, my parents are obvious, both of them. But it was really my fathers and grandfathers are probably my biggest influence growing up. After that, it was, peers, it was good teachers or real good coaches, good leaders in the military. That's sort of different. But my upbringing to shape kind of the foundation of who I am these days, the start of it all, the start of Libretti, the adult men in my life were mainly my 2 grandfathers and my father. Like I said, no shade to my mother and my grandmothers. Obviously, they're also influences, big time influences. But I did everything to be like them, or to make them proud. My grandfather JPL2 is the one who got me obsessed with planes and flying. And I dedicated my upbringing to trying to fly in the Air Force as an adult. So if just by that alone, everything I did growing up was for that goal. That was that altered my entire life trajectory right there. That dictated the whole thing. And he didn't force it upon me. He just loved planes. My other grandfather did too. My other grandfather, Big Al, was a factory man, and one of the factories he worked at was called Dante Plastics. Now, I thought it was called Dandy Plastics because it was spelled Dande, but it was probably just some stupid ginzo who pronounced his name Dante instead of Dandy, and he ran this plastics manufacturing company, and my grandfather worked in the factory there. And every year, they came out with a calendar, and the calendar was planes. Different planes, not so much military planes, but like biplanes, Cessnas, different air show style planes that were not military planes, but every year for years. So flying and aviation and military was from those two. Big Al didn't serve in the war because he had a medical condition and they wouldn't let him. So he worked in like the factories to support the effort that way. But that was that. And baseball was my old man. Sports was my old man. I played soccer. I liked soccer as well, so I played soccer through high school too. But baseball was life, sports-wise. And that was my old man. He played his whole life up through college. He only played 2 years in college. He quit. I always like to shit talk him for that, for being a quitter, because we don't quit here in the LPDS. But that also is an influence to me. Because my dad always talks about, man, if I just stuck around and didn't quit ROTC and quit baseball in college, my life would have been different. You know, the year after he quit, his college team made it to the World Series, which I believe might have been the last time they made it to the College World Series. And he didn't go because he quit. So that absolutely shaped the LPDS in my life to never quit, because he always talked about the regret. But then it was baseball and then airplane stuff. Look at my upbringing through college, just to college even. To get to college, it was baseball, sports you could say, but baseball, flying, and military. That's all I cared about. And everything I did, I went to private school. I wanted to go to private school because my public school sucked dick in high school. And I wanted to play sports, and that would give me the best chance to get into the college I wanted to go to, Air Force Academy. So I did that. Played sports there, soccer, baseball. I ran track for a couple years too. Helped my application stats out to get into college to play baseball and fly in the Air Force. Now, my first choice was the Air Force Academy, and I applied to 6 or 7 colleges, and the only college I did not get into was the Air Force Academy. But I got into the next best thing for me at the time was Embry-Riddle. Now, I hate that school because it's a money stealing racket, for profit, piece of shit fraud school. But I still got a ton of value out of it. Most colleges are like that now anyway, except for the academies for the most part. So it's whatever. That's just the business these days. But it was an aviation school, and it had the best ROTC detachment in the nation outside of the academies themselves. It was one of the best. And it had a baseball team I thought I had a legitimate chance of playing on. And what happened? All those things happened. I did ROTC, I flew, and I played baseball. So look at my life up to that point. Even now, like I did Air Force 12, 14 years. None of that happens if I don't have those 3 influences in my life. So, long story longer, biggest influences are my 2 grandfathers and my father, and then my parents and my grandmother, my mom and my grandmother's very close second. So, that's almost a no-brainer for me. And that's, again, this is no disrespect to everybody else in my life, because my peers obviously influenced things. My friends at the time did. Coaches did, all this other stuff. They get a lot of credit. All my other family members out there, I get a lot of credit, deserve a lot of credit. But at the end of the day, those 3 guys set the stage for better or worse. I got to figure out this video thing. It's really chapping my ass. I'm just gonna block the video so I don't see when it fucks up. Anyway, great question. Thank you for that. The last question was, do you remember the first time meeting your brothers? He put brothers in quotes, talking about the Brotherhood Brothers. And I absolutely do. I'm going to try to keep these stories short. I'll go through Wet Cat, Creature, Bonji, Bone Crusher, because that's who we talk about most here. Chicho, my brother-in-arms from the Air Force. We got Helmet from high school. That was an easy one. Helmet's an easy one. His last name started with an L. Mine started with an L. We started freshman year of high school. The lockers next to each other. We had lockers next to each other 4 years. His dad opened up the batting cage, Lefty Sports Academy. I worked there, played baseball together. That's easy. First day of school at a new school with no friends, Helmet was there. We called him Helmet because he had he had like a jut at his eyebrows from the football helmet because he played football too, and it gave him like Neanderthal eyebrows, like skull sticking out right here by the eyebrow area. If you're watching in YouTube land, and it was because of the football helmet, so we called him Helmet. I'm trying to think of other brothers outside of Sticks, obviously. I have a lot, I have a good amount of people in the inner circle, but those off the top of my head, those are the brothers. Um, Big Bird, Rob, he lives here in Houston. He was my big brother in the aviation fraternity I was in college my freshman and sophomore year. Um, So he's another brother. I met him throughout the fraternity. He was a mentor going through that aviation fraternity, and he lives down the street from me now, so literally a mile away. Um, Cheech from the Air Force, he was my roommate in South Dakota, but we met in Pensacola my first year in the military, 2010 when we got there, and we had. Because it was a student pipeline, I was supposed to be flying before I got the medical disqualification, which I guess I'll talk about in a future episode. Um, they had the new student indoctrination onboarding welcome brief that they send. Each week they had one per week, so you would schedule it and go. And he was in that. And before that the briefing actually started, we were all sitting in there, and I was sitting there with my two roommates in Pensacola, and those two guys I went to college with, so I knew that's why we were roommates. So we're shooting the shit. One of them's talking about going to the base gym. They have a basketball court, so we're going to try to play basketball. And Cheech chimes in. He's like, "Oh, I play basketball, so count me in for that." And I pop my head over, and I look over, and he's this 5'10", 5'11". I don't even know if he's 6 foot. Fat greaseball Italian guy. And I look at him, I was like, "You don't listen, buddy. You are the basketball. You don't play basketball. So I don't know what the hell you think you're doing out there." That's when I met him. That first day in Pensacola. The rest is history with that. He ended up playing basketball with us. I hung out with him more than my own roommates, even because my roommates started class early. I got pulled from training because of the medical stuff I was appealing. And then Cheech tore his MCL, so he got delayed at start for his training. So we hung out all the time. I was at his place constantly for the 2 years I was there. And then he came over to when I switched over to Intel from flying after my appeal stuff got jacked up. I had to switch jobs to intelligence or kick me out. So I decided to do the switch instead of leave. I had Intel training in Texas, and he was finished with his flying training, and he was in Texas about an hour away for his B1 specific flying training, because he was a B1 guy, bomber plane, if you don't know. And he came to my drop night, they called it. That's when you find out what your first job is at an Intel school is going to be, who you're going to be supporting. And we found out together that I was going to be stationed up in South Dakota at Ellsworth Air Force Base, and he already knew he was going up to Ellsworth because the B1 bases were in Texas where he was at for the student training and up in South Dakota, and he didn't want to stay in Texas for that, so he put in for South Dakota, and he got it. And we knew at that time, like, we're going to be moving up to the same spot within 6 months of each other. And we did. We moved in together. We were roommates for 4+ years there, 5 years almost. So he's my brother in arms. He's actually coming back to the Texas area soon, I think, potentially. He's currently in Louisiana doing some big-time staff duty. But he's got a wife and 2 kids now, so it's crazy that he used to be the fatso that we thought that couldn't play basketball, and now he's got a family and he's a commander and everything. So that's Cheat Show. Wet Cat, another real easy one. We show up to Steagles Eagles baseball tryouts. The first year the Steagles came around, I already got cut my 2 years previously. I think Wet Cat might have did. I can't remember. He'll have to refresh my memory. Maybe he got cut by the previous regime the year prior, and this was his second attempt trying out. I don't remember specifically. I thought he was a freshman. I thought it was his first year at the school, but I think it might have been his second year at the school. But we met day one of the fall tryouts in August. That's when the fall tryouts started, was in August. And it was the whole semester's worth of trying out with the Steagles Eagles. Like I talked about that many times in the past. And then I eventually started catching his bullpens because I was, doing bullpen. I was just doing anything to stay on the team. And then I would go have to hit against him in practice because they were trying to get me some extra hacks. And I always did well in practice because I just caught everybody's bullpens right before. So I knew I knew how good their stuff was that day. I knew what they were throwing, what they stunk at. And I was batted like 800 in practice because of that. And then I'm trying to think, Wet Cat and I were never roommates, but every time we always hung out on the weekends, we hit sticks together, obviously. And then when I would come back to Daytona, when I was stationed in Pensacola, every weekend I would basically come back when those guys were still playing. Him and the Creature were still on the team. Bonchi was a grad assistant at the time, so I couldn't let go. I had to keep coming back to get, to feed the addiction, the baseball addiction, and I would stay with those guys all the time. And same thing, go out, hit sticks, and that was that. And then we literally do the same thing to this day, as you guys know. We hit sticks, and then we rendezvous for either Euro trips, the baseball alumni events, or we just pick a time if either of us are close by to go hang out. But we talk every day. Similar situation with the Creature. I think you guys know this story. I've talked about this a lot in the past with Creature on. He was being recruited for the team. He was trying to transfer out of his old college, and he got lined up to throw a bullpen tryout session, if you will, with our pitching coach at the time, who's now the head coach, Coach Thurneau. And Bonji was supposed to be catching his bullpen. I was catching the bullpen of the other Jabroni, who was throwing. It was like I don't know what they call it, a showcase, a bullpen sesh, whatever. It wasn't really a tryout per se. It was just for our coach to get a good look and see, is this guy worth signing, transferring over here. And the first Jabroni he pitched, he was unmemorable. I don't remember who he was. I'm pretty sure that means he never signed. The coach didn't sign him. And then after one pitch, Bonji, remember, he had a flight scheduled for school, and he just up and ran away so he can go make that flight, because you had to pay extra out of pocket for your flights, and they charge you whether you show up or not, and it was a lot of money. They were triple charging you what you would have to pay for another school outside of the campus, and they had different flight programs off of the airport. I eventually switched out of the school and went to the flight programs because they were 3 times less expensive than what the school was charging on top of the tuition. So he ran, and then coach said, "Hey, Sarge, you got to go catch this guy's bullpen." And it was the Creature's bullpen. And the rest is history there. I was catching his bullpens almost regularly. Obviously, there's other bullpen catchers out there too to help out, but we became friends playing ball. And then we were roommates on the road in Idaho. I talked to you guys. We talked about the toilet clogging in Idaho and all that stuff. And then we didn't have a falling out, but we didn't stay in touch for a bit. There was no reason for it. There was no fight or anything. I think we were just in different places. I was dealing with the medical appeals and losing out on my dream career for a couple years when I was in the Air Force early on. He was in a shitty job in New York State, hating life. And then finally, I forgot what it was. I think we just texted each other randomly. I was just texting him that I just doing a fat cheese. And I used to text him videos all the time of me throwing a fat cheese in and then going like this. If you're watching in YouTube land, that means I'm out. That means the cheese got me all buzzed, and it still did it for me. And we used to joke about that because we were cheesing so hard that cheese didn't do anything for the creature in that regard. Didn't give him that buzz anymore. But it was still, because of how frequent I cheesed, it was still giving me buzzes. So I would send him videos of me throwing the cheese in, and then when the buzz activated, I would go, I'm out. And I think I randomly sent him that I think I was already in Maryland at the time, and he was in Fort Myers by then. And we decided to get back on sticks together regularly. And from then on out, we've talked every day since with Wet Cat. We were both playing on PlayStation, hitting sticks on PlayStation. And then we both upgraded to Xbox in about maybe 2020. We upgraded 2021 around that time. And then we started hitting sticks hardcore with Wet Cat and Mrs. Wet Cat. And that was, that's how the bond stayed stronger. Bone Crusher was my first year on the team as well. Like Bonji and like Wet Cat. Creature was my second year on the team. He was a transfer the second year. He was not there the first year. Bone Crusher, we became pals because he basically made fun of me and I didn't go crying or bitching and tattletaling on him. I think that's like, if you want to go, the short version is that. He shit-talked me, and I didn't cry like a bitch or take it seriously or personally, and we became friends from it. He started the Sarge nickname because I would show up. I was an upperclassman by then for ROTC. I went to my field training boot camp the summer prior, and I was doing a lot with ROTC then. I was wearing my uniform a lot. So whether it was class or running drill or leading the younger underclassmen, I was doing a lot of shit. So every time we had to show up to practice or anything baseball, I was likely coming from an ROTC thing where I had to have my uniform on. So they only saw me in uniform. In fact, I had to show up to, we had the annual physical where we had this giant Frankenstein's monster looking doctor. He was probably like 6'7", really nice guy, super smart guy, but he was a scary looking fella. And we had to do this physical where he wanted us to get our heart rates up. So he had us going running up and down the hallway to get our heart rates up. And I'm in my Blues uniform, button down shirt, blue. It was like a business uniform. Dress shoes, and I'm running up and down like an asshole in that. And then we had the one fall like athletics dinner, and I showed up in my uniform then too because I was coming from an ROTC thing. And Bone Crusher saw that, and he's like, "Who does this guy think he is? Like Sergeant Slaughter or whatever, And they were calling me Sarge because I was a wiener, I was a loser. They were making fun of that fact in a funny way, and I remember there was a couple of guys on the team that I didn't like. They didn't last long. Some of them didn't even last the fall. They ended up leaving after the fall, but they certainly didn't last after that year. But they heard Bone Crusher talking to, calling me like, who's this guy think he is? Like Sergeant Savage over here? I wasn't a sergeant ever. My officer ranks don't have sergeant. Those are enlisted, but everyone always asks me, why is your nickname Sarge? You were an officer. It's like, that's because it was college. Like, they're not looking at the rank structure. Let me shit talk this guy, but let me make sure I follow the proper rank structure. Like, that would have been a bigger loser move than just making fun of me. So a couple of these guys would just randomly, like, they never called it to me before. They just started calling me Sarge. And I knew they were doing it to try to get my goat. get me going and get me all pissed off, or at least ask the question like, "Why you calling me Sarge?" And then they would giggle like schoolgirls and be like, "Oh, well, I guess you'll never know," and try to get me that way. I know that game, and because I didn't like them, I wasn't going to entertain that game with them. So they're like, "Hey, what's up, Sarge?" I was like, "Hey, what's up, Joey?" or whatever your name is, Dylan, whatever. And it just kept walking. I just because I think I let it brush off, and I laughed about it when people were making fun of it. I think the Bone Crusher saw like, oh, this guy's not a pussy. He's not a beta bitch boy. And that was basically that. I was hanging out with Bonji a lot my first year, and they were roommates. He was roommates with the Bone Crusher. So we hung out a lot by default then. And we shared our love of shit talking and wrestling. And then after Bud graduated, he had an arm surgery. He was playing independent like minor league ball, but then he had an arm surgery, so he was rehabbing back at Embry-Riddle. So he was hanging out a lot then too, catching bullpens, and then he lived about 30 minutes away. My final year at the U, so we still were able to hang out a lot. He was still around a lot then, so we just stayed in touch that way from baseball and wrestling. We would rendezvous for pay-per-view matches. And then I moved to Maryland area, so right down the street from him. In fact, the first like several weeks I was there, I was living at his apartment on his couch while my house was getting ready that I was renting. So you just grow these strong bonds that way. And then the last one I'll talk about was Bonji. God damn this video. Don't look at it. Don't look at the video. My freshman year, before 2 years before I was on the team, I think told the story a lot. The first time I saw him was in ROTC class, freshman year, and we were doing the intros around the horn. Tell us, your name, something you like, where you're from, yada 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 yada. And they're going alphabetical. Oh, going alphabetical. Excuse me. So I'm before Libretti is before Roper Hubbard. So I get up there. I'm telling him, John, I'm from Jersey. I love flying. I love the military. And I want to play baseball, so I'm going to try out for the baseball team. And by the time it got to him, he goes, "Hey, I'm Brandon, this and that. I'm already on the baseball team." So he points to me. He goes, "Anytime my man over here wants to have a catch, you let me know." And I was like, got him. Friend for life. Well, that was the last time I saw Bonji in a room together for the next 2 years. It wasn't until I made the team that I actually interacted with him again. I did try out for the team. He left ROTC. He had 1 week of it, and he's like, "No, I'm not doing this. I got to play baseball. It's going to take up too much time. I'm out." So he didn't do it, and so he dropped the class. He dropped the program, so I never saw him. I saw him around campus, and I saw him when I went to go watch games, and he was at the tryout when I got cut my first year. And then when I finally got on the team my third year, I let him know. I told, "Hey, do you remember this?" He's like, "Yeah, I fucking remember." And I absolutely left the course the next week, and that was that. And then I don't remember distinctly how we became so close after that, besides us being throwing partners for the next 3 years, practice and game throwing partners, pre-game throwing partners, and that was it. And you sort of build a bond doing that with the guy. Like that's your throwing partner. And after Bud graduated, after the Bone Crusher graduated, it was me and Bonji basically for the most part. We jumped in with other people every once in a while, but so I would hang out with him a lot. He had 1 year he had a surgery, so I was hanging out at his house. At his apartment. I think this is after Bone Crusher graduated. His mom came down, and I met her for the first time. She was helping him with his recovery. And we used to make weekend breakfasts at the apartment, big pancakes, or waffles, but mostly pancakes, eggs, hash browns, the works, bacon, everything. And we just started doing that stuff together. I was, we would hit the clubs and the bars together. Most of the time I was DDing, but every once in a while I would turn up, and it didn't take much to get me going. And that, and then we obviously stayed in touch. I lived close enough in Pensacola. I can go to Daytona a lot. I always stayed at his place whenever I went back down to Daytona. And then when he moved back to Atlanta, I was still close for a while. To go visit him there every once in a while. He came to visit me in South Dakota, up in Maryland. So it was just best pals for life from there. So long story longer on this question answer. I remember the first time I ever met each and every one of my brothers. That's why they're my brothers, because you don't forget these guys. These are people you don't forget for a reason. The people that I do forget, they're not in the circle. They're not in the brotherhood, for various different reasons. But these are important people in my life, the most important. So I'm never going to forget those times that I met those guys and all the stories and memories we shared. Oh, that's easy. This might be a long story like this one was. It might be a long answer, but it's not a difficult one. I'll never forget those times. But like I said, maybe I'll put these in Instagram reel form for opening the vault up, because these are great questions. But thank you for these questions. And that's it, folks. That's all I got to say about that. And no more questions. I really appreciate it. We'll do a movie review soon enough. I'll put something, if I remember soon, I'll put a feeler for what movie you want reviewed, and we can discuss it. I'll give the spoiler warning just in case. But that's it. I really appreciate these questions. It really helped me make this additional episode, so that I don't have to stress, and you guys still get LPDS each and every week, even when I'm out of town. So before we go, very quickly, the big three, the three pillars of staying strong, of being a better, happier, kinder, healthier, less stressed, more genuine human being, being able to spread that positivity and goodness to all those around you throughout the land. Number one, exercise every day. Do at least one thing each and every day to improve your fitness and health physically, mentally, or emotionally. Number two, the hardest one to do, don't be a shitty or negative person. Be a kind person. When the opportunity arises to be shitty and negative, take a deep breath, take the LPDS step back, detach from those negative emotions, and remove yourself from the situation. Number three, the most important one, be genuinely thankful and grateful for all the good you have in your life. And you can do this each and every day by taking a few seconds to think about one good thing in your life, or one good thing that happened to you in your life that day, and think about what your life would be like without that. And that will immediately put you in a state of gratitude. And the more you're in a state of gratitude, the easier it's going to be for you to remove yourself from the negative situations and not be a shitty person. And that'll give you more capacity and space to go do more positive, productive things with your lives, like exercising. And if you do these three things a little bit each and every day, repetition, 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 a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, I promise you, you'll be a better, happier, kinder, healthier, less stressed, more genuine human being, be able to spread that positivity and goodness to all those around you throughout the land. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe, put your notifications on, and tell your friends and enemies. Hit that hotline, 202-670-1114. Miss the hotline, love the hotline. You know how I feel about the hotline, 202-670-1114. Thank you guys again. I love you all. Stay strong.